Hi, folks. Welcome back to another example on how we use technology to help us find binomial distributions. All right. So in this example, we're looking at a Gallup poll. 60% of American adults prefer saving over spending. Let X equal the number of American adults out of a random sample of 50 who prefer saving to spending. All right. So it's probably a good idea to make sure that we know that this is a binomial distribution, okay? And so remember that our indicator is that there's either a success or a failure, all right? And so the way I'm going to frame this one is I'm going to say, well, hey, we're looking to see who likes saving. Saving, yes, you like saving. No, you prefer spending. Okay. And it tells us in the question that 60% of American adults prefer saving over spending. And so what that means for us is little p equals 0.6. Okay. Now, since there's only two options, either you prefer saving or you prefer spending, we know that Q is going to be 0.4 or like 1 minus 0.6. Okay. The other thing that might be important for us to note here is that we are looking at a sample of 50 adults, all right? Now, part A says, what is the probability distribution for X, all right? Now, the way your book writes it, it writes X is a binomial distribution. They use the uppercase letter B, and then they put how many are in your sample, so 50, comma, your probability of success, okay? So this first number is your N, and this second number is your P, all right? So part B, it says use the calculator to find the following probabilities, okay? So it says the probability that 25 adults in the sample prefer saving over spending. So let's write that out. What would that be if we think about how we would write it out in symbols? So we would write the probability that X equals 25 out of N equals 50. Okay. All right. Part two, the probability that at most 20 adults prefer savings. That would be the probability that X is less than or equal to 20, still out of our sample size of 50. And the third one says the probability that more than 30 adults prefer savings. Okay, so the way we'd write that P, X is greater than 30, comma, N equals 50. Okay. Now, again, there is a formula for this, but we are using StatCrunch, all right? So I'm actually going to do part C first, and then I'm going to go to StatCrunch so I can switch screens and show you how to find the answers for part B, okay? So we're going to skip to part C for a moment. It says, using the formulas, calculate the mean and the standard deviation of X. And so in our textbook, our mean, also known as your expected value. All right. Well, we say this is the letter mu equals N times P. All right. Well, good thing we identified what our N is. N is 50. And our P is 0.6. And when we multiply them, we get 30. Okay. But what does this mean? This 30 means that on average, you will find 30 American adults out of 50 who prefer saving. All right, let me write that down. This is the on average we expect to find 30 American adults. All right, 30 American adults who prefer saving. All right. So we found a number, we know the formula, but we also know what it means. All right. Now, the second thing they ask us to find is that standard deviation. In other words, like how far are we from the middle? Okay. How does that data spread? And so our standard deviation, we use the word symbol sigma, looks like a little O with a line on the top. And the formula for that is the square root of n times p times q. And when we type in our numbers or we enter in our numbers, we've got 50 times 0.6 times 0.4. And when we multiply those all out, we get a standard deviation of 3.5. Okay. All right. So as promised, we're now going to switch screens. I'm going to go to StatCrunch and show you again how we can type in these things into StatCrunch. Okay. So the expectation is not that you calculate these by hand. So please, please don't do that. Okay. The expectation is that we know how to use StatCrunch to find what we need to find. Okay. All right. Let me switch screen. All right. So once you've logged into StatCrunch, you're going to click Open StatCrunch. And remember, we don't need a data set for this, okay? We want to just use the calculator. So I'm going to go to Stat, Calculator, and I want to go to Binomial, all right? Later on, we'll do some of these other ones, but right now we're doing the Binomial. And looks like we still have our data, they just put in some stuff for us. But how many people are we looking for? We're looking for 50. We know that our success is if the adult prefers savings, and that percentage was 60, so 0.6. And then the first one we said was when x equals, so I'm going to change this to equals, not 5, but 25. Okay? And I'm going to ask it to compute, and there should just be one red bar at 25, and the height of that bar gives us that probability. So we have 0.0404, or we have about a 4% chance of getting exactly 25 adults that prefer saving. Okay. All right, the next one was x is less than or equal to, not 25, but 20. So let me go ahead and compute that. And we can see there are some red bars. They're super, super tiny, but they're there. All right. And that means that we have a really small probability that we're going to find 20 or fewer adults who prefer saving. Okay. And that should make sense because most our probability states that we should have more adults who are preferring to save rather than spend. Okay. The last one we said x is greater than 30. Now, before I type it in, what do we think? Are we going to have a lot of red bars? Are we going to have a lot of black bars? I'll let you think about that. All right, I'm going to type in 30 and compute. All right, so whether you were right or wrong, okay, but we want to see all these bars that are to the right of 30, and it looks like we have about a 44.65% chance that we'll get at least 30, more than 30 adults who prefer saving, okay? All right, so I hope this was helpful and allows you to find some success on that My Open Math. But remember, you're not meant to be the calculator. We are using StatCrunch for that. We just have to understand what we're typing in. Okay? All right, see you later.